Coach Torpey, we really want to thank you for taking the time. This is awesome for all of us. There's coaches on here. I see players, of course, lots of parents. Thank you for taking the time for this.
No, thanks for having me. I enjoy doing these.
So, hey, one thing before I jump into the recruiting, because I know people have been texting me that they're excited for this. How about as a lacrosse fan, a college lacrosse fan, how about any difference for you guys last year after you guys knocking off both Duke and the eventual national champs Virginia as a team from the Southeast, not named Duke or UNC? It's like a buzz of people around here talking about High Point, and just any words about last year?
Yeah, it was a great run. I mean, an unbelievable group of guys, very fun to coach. I mean, as bought in a group of seniors as I think I've ever been around in 18 years of doing this. And some phenomenal players. I've said for a couple of years, I think we have some of the best positional players in the country. And to see those guys do it at an incredibly high level last year was awesome. It was a testament to all the work those guys put in. And beyond that, just a fantastic staff at a great university. And, I think the sky's the limit for what we can do. And I think, with our program, only being really 8 years old in terms of the amount of years we've played, we've only scratched the surface of how good we can be. So it seems like every year we keep, improving just the way we develop guys, the way we recruit, just the X's and O's portion. I'm looking forward to seeing what our guys can do this year. We've got a great schedule and once again, going to challenge our guys early on with a powerful group of teams we play. And then, we've, developed this Southern Conference to be one that's become incredibly competitive with some great teams and some fantastic coaches. So I think the play will be incredibly high end there too.
Congratulations to you guys. It's funny because sometimes people talk about, of course, Duke or the elite programs, and they say, well, Duke's too high, but maybe this program or that program. And it's like, well, High Point, you guys took out those guys. So in the gap, to say the least, is right there. So I'm sure as we get into the recruiting discussion, it'll be helpful to get your insight, but also you guys are more and more selective every year, I imagine.
Yeah, no doubt about it. The thing is, I think, in the recruiting process, when you're starting a program, when you take over a new position, there's a lot of people that want to write the script for you. And for us, we've kind of gone by our own rules, and it's helped us really to get to where we are so quickly, both in building the culture of our program and, competing on the field. So yeah, it's like I said, it's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of fun to see what this thing can become.
Cool. The last question before we jump, just right into all the recruiting questions is, how about just, how long have you been at the program, and just a little background for those watching here?
Yeah, started the program, got the position in 2010, left Dartmouth. I was at Denver for 5 years with Jamie Monroe. Was fortunate enough to coach with some incredible guys over the past couple of years, and both on my staff and guys that I was able to learn from. Played a couple of years, probably the worst guy to ever play in both pro leagues, but had a lot of fun doing that. Just married, 3 children, trying to balance being a good dad and being a good coach. And with each year, as the kids get older, it gets harder and harder. So hopefully my wife can attest to the fact that I'm doing a good job at home. I don't know if I am or not, but I know, in the office and at High Point, we have a great environment there. It's a great school, fantastic, university president is just incredibly, just 100% kind of can-do attitude. It trickles down to everybody there. And it's a lot of, every day you kind of come in and there's something new and something exciting and something fun. It's a lot of fun to be there.
I just got some questions I wrote just to kind of guide us, but of course we can, myself as a high school coach, a club guy, a parent, I'm super interested in all you have to say because, for those listening, I think there's a layer, myself included, of those out communicating what we think sometimes from a club perspective or other perspectives. Then there's, Coach Jamie Monroe talks about, he's like, then there's the real perspective, which is your guy's perspective, whose livelihood is dependent around making good decisions and building your program. I think this will be informative. I'd love to get your perspective on, as a high level Division I program. Can you start us off how you guys approach recruiting with your team? Just any perspective around that initially here.
Yeah, it all starts with the people. For us, we put a really heavy emphasis on the parents, bringing in great parents that are bought into our vision, that believe in the culture that we've built, that want to continue to help make the culture stronger. And you're in a profession that deals with 16 to probably 22, 23-year-old kids, and when the 16, 17-year-old comes into the office, they typically don't say much. So we rely a lot on what the parents say, how the kids act with the parents, and all that kind of comes to fruition through the first stage is the evaluation, whether it's through film or whether it's through actually seeing that kid live. You go out, you look for kids that are athletic, kids that fit the mold of your program on the field. And then you really start to learn about them, what kind of student they are, what kind of person they are, what kind of worker they are, how they deal with certain sets of adversity in their life. And, then if you get through that stage where the club coach, gives them, positive kudos, and the high school coach does, or people in that locale that might know that student athlete can speak well on their behalf. The next phase for us is to invite them to our campus. If they're interested in coming to campus, they'd spend the night with one of our guys during the school day, not during the weekend, where they get a chance to experience classes. They get a chance to experience a practice, sit down in our office. And I typically like to spend, anywhere from, an hour to 2 hours with each student athlete that's visiting, just so I can, form a strong, just opinion on whether they're going to be a good fit for our program. Also rely heavily on our guys. And, when we get to that stage where we feel like the student athlete's going to make it here, their parents are going to be bought in, they're going to, believe in what we do. They're going to be, there for their son, during the good times and during the dark times, when playing time or adversity with losses, things of that settle in, then we'd offer that student athlete an opportunity. And, with the recruiting process, I think what you've got to be really weary of, and I don't want to jump ahead, I'm sure this question is going to pop up, but
yeah,
you got to be very weary of people that put blanket statements on this process. Typically when people put blanket statements on the recruiting process, it pertains to maybe 1% of the student athletes out there that are going to get contacted on September 1, that are going to get offers by, the 10th of September, their junior year. And I know for us, I wasn't a 1%er. My staff wasn't 1%ers. We don't have a locker room full of 1%ers. And, for us, the process takes a little bit longer. We want to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row. We want to make sure we have everything and anything we need to make sure that student athlete is going to be a great fit within what we build. We're not going to compromise our morals by bringing in somebody that is going to somehow, hurt the culture of our program. And, it's unique. I mean, for some programs, they might be done recruiting by the time November hits, in that 2021 class, which is now the first group of guys that we can recruit in terms of being juniors that, become eligible to be recruited September 1st. But for us, we won't be. I mean, if you look at the history of our program and the best guys that have played in our program, how late they commit to us is mind-blowing. I mean, you got a guy like Timmy Troutner, who representing here with my Redwoods jersey here,
yeah.
Who committed to us, who arguably became the best goalie in Division I lacrosse last year, and committed to us in May of his senior year after the MIA championship at St. Mary's. And he ended up becoming not only the best goalie in the country in Division I last year, in my opinion, but he became, a world team, type goalie and an all-pro goalie this year in a league that, put out the best professionals in the world. So, we don't panic. I tell guys not to. And, just understand that this thing is completely unique to each individual. It's not unique. It's not, this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. It's going to be individual to, a unique experience for the school that's recruiting you. It's going to be a unique experience for the situation at hand. It's going to be a unique experience in terms of the timing. And, like I said, don't panic. Just enjoy the process and work on what you can control, which is obviously getting better at the game that we're playing.
One of the questions I think you have, let's say you take a defenseman, they're a good 8th grade player, a good athlete. It becomes hard, whether it's a coach or it's a player, to kind of figure out where eventually they're going to slot. They look really good, but they're in the Southeast, a good player, but people are trying to figure out, what they may be a Division III player, Division II, Division I. Just any thoughts around, how that shakes out over time? I'm sure it's not a one-shot deal, but just love any insight. Because, I find parents aren't irrational. They're not, they care and they want to try to find the right fit, but they just don't know. They can see their kid's a pretty good player, but it's hard for them to tell whether they're high point material or whether, that's not realistic or not. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, just in general, I think if you're from, more of an off the beaten path area, you've got to work extra hard to get the opportunities to get seen, be noticed, and obviously get recruited. And, when I say off the beaten path area, I'm talking about places outside of Philly, Baltimore, Washington, D.C., Long Island, upstate New York, the traditional hotbeds of the sport. And while you look at a place like Atlanta and, the way and the rate that place is growing in terms of pumping out, college level players, it's remarkable. There's certain areas like that, Dallas, Texas, Columbus, Ohio, a place, certain places out in California, the San Diego area is just incredible in terms of the amount of guys that are put out there. But I think anytime you're not at or you're not in an environment where 20 coaches aren't going to come to your high school games, or you're not going to have 30 kids on your roster in high school that are all playing Division I, Division II, or Division III, or you're not competing against a program every single week that's playing Division I, Division II, or Division III, you've got to work extra hard, to get the opportunities that are going to be afforded to you. And you got to check all the boxes. You got to be a good person. You got to make the right decisions socially. You got to do what you need to do academically. And when the time comes to perform at the sport of lacrosse, whether it's through a video, the best highlights, the best version of you over the last year, summer, whether it's an opportunity at a prospect day, whether it's an opportunity at a team camp, you're going to have a very small sliver to prove yourself at an incredibly high level. If you're talking about specific positions, we'll talk about the defensive position. We develop defensemen and we recruit defensemen based on really four things. Are they great on the ball? Are they great off the ball? Are they great with the ball? And then the last piece is like, can they attack in those facets? Can they attack in transition? Can they attack a guy's hands on the perimeter? Can they attack in terms of like looking and hunting, slides and double teams when those present themselves? And I think each coach has a very similar mindset as to what's going to work for their program. I know for us, like we recruit maybe a different kind of guy than a place like Duke or a place like Johns Hopkins, that can get the 6'2", 210 power guy going downhill. Maybe that guy isn't interested in high point. And so we develop a system that allows us to play and allow a system of development that allows us to, be able to compete with those programs playing kind of a different style. So, my best advice for people in Atlanta, people in these, again, I don't want to sound, I don't want this to sound the wrong way, but you're playing in a really great area. But I don't think you'll ever go to a high school game in Atlanta, no matter who's playing, whether it's the best team or, a good team against even a team that comes in from out of town. You're never going to look up in the stands and see 25 Division I coaches. Maybe that changes over the years. But right now that's not going to take place. So you need to go out and showcase yourself and put yourself in great situations and scenarios that are going to allow you to play in front of as many people as you possibly can. Yeah,
that's great perspective on the position. I might hit you with some rapid fire later on by a couple things for the positions, because that's great insight for all of us. How about along those lines around, let's call it a non-traditional area, Atlanta? I find Atlanta's got really good athletes. You don't necessarily have a lot of transplants of people that came in, but there's not the generational of all the parents playing the sport. So some cases a fact. Along those lines, how about any thoughts about when like someone should maybe begin to go into a showcase? Is there a period where maybe it's too soon, or just thoughts around, the stuff outside of high school?
I don't know if there's ever a time where it's too early to go to a showcase. You just have to curb your expectations. I mean, if you're a 2023 thinking that you're going to be playing, in front of 50 coaches on the sideline, that's not going to happen. 2-3 years ago, yes, it would. Nowadays, I think coaches are recruiting essentially two classes. They're recruiting the senior class in case something happens, or if they have spots open late, and then they're recruiting the junior class. And that's happening, through the fall. That's happening through the summer, obviously, through the spring. But the days of going to a 2022 field and a 2023 field at the current time where we are right now, and seeing lineups of coaches, it's not going to happen, honestly. But you still have an opportunity to play and learn what it's going to be like to play, against some of the best teams in the country, and for a kid from Atlanta, or maybe, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, or Columbus, Ohio, or Houston, Texas, that's going to be a great gauge as to what you need to do to compete at an incredibly high level. If you're playing against a team from Long Island or a team from Baltimore that has, a bunch of kids from, prep schools that project to have, 15, 20, 30 kids on a team that are going to play lacrosse, and you're doing particularly well there's a good likelihood you're going to have an opportunity to play at some point somewhere. And I think that the other thing too is, so many parents get so fixated on Division I lacrosse. I can tell you, I coached in Division III for 4 years. If you're a competitor and you want to get a great education, there are incredible opportunities at every level, whether it's MCLA, NAIA, whether it's Division III, Division II, Division I, some club programs that, are even, at Division I schools. I know we have one in High Point that's pretty competitive. There's an opportunity for everybody. And, I see a lot of parents, it's almost like they appear like there's something wrong with their child if they can't play at the absolute highest level. And to me, it's ludicrous, because there's just so few opportunities. I mean, you're talking about 75 teams in Division I that are probably bringing anywhere from 10 to 15 kids a year. Do the math. I mean, there's not that many opportunities based on the amount of guys playing. So a lot more in Division III, a lot more in Division II, and you might just find that geographically or school wise or school size, maybe better opportunities in other places. So this is a big thing too. And I said it about kind of building our program is don't let anyone write your script in this process. I see way too many kids that are like, oh, I'm not going to that school. My buddy said it's not great. Or, my parents don't think that's going to be a good fit. You have no idea until you get there. I mean, I've looked at, numerous opportunities in Division I lacrosse before I took the High Point job. And there were places where people were like, oh, you don't want to go there. Oh, it's not a good place. And typically the people that are saying that are either negative by nature or they're making, a quick assumption that's not based on really any fact whatsoever. And so for me, I always wanted to, make the assessment and make the decision based on what I saw and what I experienced. And, it always boded, well for me to be able to do that.
With the later time periods, it was getting a little ridiculous. Even if kids weren't talented enough at that level, just the perception at 6th, 7th grade, thinking they have to be ready in a year was getting insane by the 8th and 9th grade. But along those lines, I mean, this coming summer will be the class of 22. When do people first possibly come on your radar? Are there kids, hey, we know who these guys are, so when they come in to that point, or do you really not know any of these guys nowadays until they hit to that point?
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear what other programs' perspectives are on that. I can tell you from High Point's perspective, we haven't had one conversation about a 2022 yet. And I don't anticipate that coming until, one of my assistants happens to walk by a 2022 field, during the course of the fall and says, man, you should see this kid that's playing for this program. And, for us, we are fully entrenched in the 21s right now. This is going to sound crazy, but we're talking to and having 21s visit our campus right now. We've gotten a few commitments from 21s. 20s, we're still looking for a couple guys there. We will for the, probably for the, the remainder of the season in case somebody leaves or, we have a kid poached at the 11th hour, which has happened a lot with our program. And then we're also looking for, a 2019 goalie, okay, or a transfer goalie. We're looking for somebody, at the mid-year that can come in and help our program, and not so much as a starting goalie. I think we've got 3 really good guys in our program, but for somebody that wants an opportunity to play Division I, that isn't afraid to get shot on in practice and someone that wants to be a part of our program, so that's not the norm. It's not normal for a Division I coach to talk about the fact that they're still recruiting, or would be happy to take a kid, that's already graduated high school. But, the most decorated player in the history of our program, Dan Lomas, who was a 3-time All-American for us, committed to us a year after he graduated high school. So again, we're not, we're not afraid to, take a guy. And people always say, oh, late bloomers. Man, those are normal bloomers. I mean, I think I was like 4'11" going into my junior year at Calvert Hall. And, it was laughable to think that I would have the opportunity to play Division I lacrosse. And, fortunate enough for me, I've got, I guess, some good genes, and I grew to be 6'3", 210 pounds by the time I graduated. And I was, I was lucky enough to get an opportunity to play at Ohio State. But, for me, I like those guys. I mean, the guys that commit late in the process to me have a nice little chip on their shoulder. They still feel like they have something to prove. And I've always felt like for us, it's less about recruiting and it's more about developing. I mean, we take a great pride in just the way we develop our fundamentals that allow our guys to develop, and we change those on a yearly basis based on, how the game's shifting and what we need to do to be successful. But I always say, like, we'll bet on our fundamentals, in our development over, any sort of recruiting rankings and things of that sort.
That's definitely a golden nugget for people listening, just even that perspective of the year groups, because we have a lot of 22s on here, 23s, 24 families, and 22s are kind of, I'll say, stressing out a little bit because they don't know. They're like, hey, do we need to get up there and check things out right away, or at least plan ahead? But I think that's great perspective to say.
And you do. Yeah. I mean, you want to plan ahead. I mean, going to prospect camps and having an idea of, is this school going to be a good fit? Is this going to be a good place geographically? Is this the size of school? those things are important. And I think the more you kind of get your ducks in a row in the early stages, the better off you're going to be when, ultimately decisions are being forced to be made, or, you want to make a decision. But, just understand that by going to a prospect camp, we still can't communicate with you, outside of a questionnaire and a camp email until September 1 of your junior year. So, I get parents all the time, like, I didn't hear anything from you about my son. I'm like, I can't reach out to you per NCAA rules, so yeah, it's do your homework, do all that stuff in the front end, but just curb your expectations.
Along those lines of, someone's interested in, say, High Point, or another school, you recommend, trying to go to, and they think they're maybe somewhere in the ballpark or have some shot or aspirations there, whether it's that school or another school, you recommend them try to go to a prospect day at that school and just spend time up at the school? Yeah.
I mean, we've taken probably 70 plus guys from our prospect camps over the last 8 years. And, beyond that, we could bring in anywhere upwards of 18 coaches from different schools to our prospect camps. And the cool thing about the prospect camp is, we've gotten 70 plus guys. There's probably 500 other plus kids that have, committed to other schools or have just come to High Point based on the fact that they liked what they saw there. And prospect camps, at schools that value them and run them the right way, I think what you're going to do is you're going to learn that school's fundamentals. You're going to see how that school's coaches coach. I mean, for us, we're on the field every single part of the day, running practices, running drills, running specific stuff on a certain end of the ball. We want to see who's coachable. And it's really one of the only places, if you're interested in the school, where you can be guaranteed that every single person on that staff is going to be there. And, those things have become incredibly valuable for us as both an initial evaluation, a secondary evaluation. And, I use guys in our program as an example. There's been guys in our program that have come to an initial prospect camp, maybe their junior year, that we've said, I don't think this is going to work out for you. That, a couple months later we see again and we're like, oh my gosh, man, this kid's changed. He's, put some, done some different things to his game. He's improved a lot. And then all of a sudden we end up offering that kid an opportunity. And that's happened, too numerous to be able to even talk about.
I think that's really encouraging for everyone to hear. I know I talked to you just for a couple minutes before we jumped on, a real brief. I said, I grew up in Syracuse, and it was like, we went to the Empire, tried to make the Empire State games, or I went to Army. So I went to summer camp in Army, and Jack Emmer came up and watched me play, came to our football games. And that was pretty much it. It wasn't, there wasn't travel club, and it was, but you spent some time at the school. I visited the school because I was interested in it, along with a few others. But it's good to hear that's still, to some extent, that's still alive, probably on both ends. And again, I guess to your point earlier, it doesn't necessarily have to even be a division. Whether that's Division I, or it could be, other schools out there, Division III, Division II, et cetera, right?
No doubt.
No
doubt.
Yep. Cool. How about let's hit a. Actually, I'm going to jump. Coach Satterley here. I see a couple, Matt Satterley here from Georgia Tigers says would love to have some thoughts on declassing. I guess I would consider that. You call it declassing or reclassing? Do you're recruiting players and tell them they need to do a PG year? So kind of that trend. I know we definitely see that, at certain levels, guys, wherever, going to Ohio State, so forth. There, hey, you're gonna go spend a year at prep school, and then we're gonna take you. Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think you've got to be a fan of any way that's going to get you an opportunity to get to the school you want to get to. If you have a conversation with a coach that says, hey, listen, I'd love for you to take a PG year. We can't offer you this year. We don't have money available this year. Is it something you'd be interested in doing next year? If that's the path to get to the school and it's kind of a 1 year delay, I know for myself as a student athlete, I'd be all over that. To each his own. Some guys want to go to college and some guys are happy with the opportunities they have. But I think you just have to be open to everything. And I think, like I said, I don't think anybody right now, I don't think there's a coach in Division I lacrosse right now, Division II or Division III, that can tell you exactly how this new recruiting process is going to work. And like I said, anybody that does, I don't know if you can believe them, because I think this thing changes on a daily basis. For us right now, everybody wants to know, well, what are you doing with the goalies? What are you doing with the faceoff guys? Two positions that we've always been pretty good at.
Yep.
Listen, I have no idea. I have no idea. We have a bunch of guys visiting campus. We're in the conversation with some guys that I think might be the best goalies in the country. But at the same time, so they're in conversation with some other fantastic schools. And I think, you'll see this thing continue to play out, but it's so hard to figure this out right now. It really is. And I'm saying that from the perspective of a Division I coach. If you asked me to give this talk 15 years ago, I could hit it out of the park and everybody would know exactly where their kids stood. And we'd be like, oh, it makes sense. Timelines, things like that. There's more concrete. Where now, again, it's just so unique to, every kid that you're going to be recruiting. It's such a different story with every guy.
So Troy Steiner, he asked a question. How about, what do you think are the top 3 showcases today and why? And I guess maybe another way is if, from a Division I point, if you were going to say, hey, a couple showcases that you do attend or see players, is there a couple that jump out to you?
No.
You did tell me you were going to be honest.
No. I mean, it's a situation where, so much of it is geographical too, like what schools are going to be at what events. And I think what you find is coaches at the Division I level, and I'll speak from that perspective, I think Division III coaches kind of go to recruiting events and recruit with this really wide lens and will recruit the entire field, where, we'll do that at certain times, certain parts of the year. So we'll kind of go everywhere. But typically we go to recruiting events to recruit 1 or 2 kids. I mean, we will go there to watch, 1 or 2 kids play, and there'll be guys that catch our eye, and, we'll take notes on as many kids as we possibly can. But, it gets to the point where you're deeper in the summer. And I know for us this year, I followed around 120 for 3 camps and was, on him the whole time. And so my lens was tightened just on him. And when you do that, it allows you to see, how he interacts with his parents, what his effort is at the beginning of the game, at the end of the game. And, I laugh. I have so much respect for the best coaches in this game, guys like Dave Petramala and John Danowski and Joe Bresci. And, these guys are friends. These guys are mentors. And I laugh sometimes when they go to recruiting tournaments because people are like, oh my gosh, look who's here. When really those guys are there to watch one player play. They might walk by your field, but they're not necessarily there to recruit the field. And so
they're there to watch our 2025s.
Yeah, it'd be great to think that. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's it's just
that's a great point. Yeah,
it's a good, it's interesting to think because I think there's some people that get so hooked on different tournaments, but. I remember that old Coach episode. Remember that show Coach back in the day?
Oh yeah.
There was the episode where there's a kicker from Afghanistan that sends in a film of them kicking a goat's head, and the guy travels all the way to Afghanistan to see him, and when he gets inside the hut, Lou Holtz is already in there.
Right.
Somebody tells me, hey, the best kid in the world is playing lacrosse, and he's in Senegal. I don't know where Senegal is. But you bet your ass I'll get a ticket there, fly there, and go to see the kid. So, I mean, it doesn't matter where you're from, who you are, what you do. If you're great, we're going to come find you.
So actually that leads perfectly to another question. There's multiple clubs in every state. Along those lines is kind of the phrase, let me throw it out. Club coach tells a kid or a family, in order to get recruited, you need to play for this club or this program. What's your perspective on that?
I mean, I think there's some club programs that do a better job of going to events where, there has a tendency to be coaches, things of that sort. But I could tell you there's not a college coach in the country that, cares about that kind of stuff. They just want the best players, and typically there are programs that have high concentration of really good players at certain age groups that you're going to watch a little bit more. But, for me, I love finding diamonds, man. I love finding diamonds in the rough. If you look at just our program in general, it's a team full of, guys that were told they weren't good enough. And I tend to gravitate towards people like that because that's what I was, So for me, if that kid's got a fire in his eye and he shows us that he wants to, get developed and play at a high level and they've got a work ethic and a drive, there's a good opportunity that we're going to be able to turn them into something great. So, there's club programs we have better relationships with than others. And typically my, take on the club thing is I just want people in my life that are completely authentic and honest. That's it. That's all I want. Because if a club program calls us about some kid who's not very good and we end up taking him, which I would never do without seeing him, that's probably going to lead me to, not want to go down that path again with that club program. And we get a lot of this. High Point gets a lot of this. It's, well, he's not good enough to play there, but he's good enough to play for you. Listen, man, I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. But if I want to, I'll go dig in Houston, Texas for some kid who's 6'2", 210 pounds, who's on the football team, who plays basketball, who is a third of how good he's going to be in college when he's a full-time lacrosse player, I'll take that kid over the other kid any day of the week. I don't do well with, people that are fake and phony. And, I always say, my old boss used to say liars are losers. And I'm the same way. It's like, I don't want to be around people unless they're, truthful with me. And when I do find those people, I hold them very near and dear to myself as a coach. I want to make sure that, we keep really strong and good relationships with those people.
That's great insight there. I heard you mention in that context around some multi-sport, and I see Jeff Toman asked, and his son Lake is a pretty talented multi-sport because he's a big football player too. The question is, how do you view multi-sport athletes versus those focused more on lacrosse year round?
I love it. I mean, those, it's not to say that there's kids that are just lacrosse players that aren't fantastic, but, especially when we recruit kids from, off the beaten path areas and they play football or they play soccer or they play, they're a wrestler or they played hockey or basketball. Like I said, we don't ever feel like we're getting the finished product by the time they come to us. And so for us, we love that. I mean, if you're going to put down on a piece of paper, or send us an email that says I'm, 5'9", 180 pounds, it's probably not going to jump out at us. But if you put like I'm a starting running back on a 5A football team that went to the state semifinals, you just grabbed our attention, So, and the thing is too, it's like, it doesn't matter what sport it is. I mean, I find a lot of similarities, in different sports with the sport of lacrosse. I think, sports you wouldn't even think are crossover sports, golf, tennis, soccer, just the way where you put your eyes when you're playing a guy defensively, the movements, the motions. I can find a similarity or, some sort of connecting point with, pretty much anything a guy does. So I love it. I mean, I think it's great. If you like for instance, if you're recruiting a kid from Dallas who maybe doesn't play at one of the top 6 high schools down there, but he's playing for, a football program that's, getting national TV games, that kid's ready, man. I mean, that kid has been coached hard. That kid has been told no. That kid has been, put in some really uncomfortable environments that by the time they come to play lacrosse for you, depending upon the person, they could really, you could strike gold with people like that. And we always have.
That's awesome. Really, really good perspective. So it's good along those lines there with the, I heard you say, kids being coached hard. And how about any feedback around dynamics or perspectives you have with kids, maybe equal kids, but, maybe the grittiness of a kid or how they've been coached or, I don't know, softness, that kind of perspective. Is there dynamics where you're interacting with a kid or handled with kid gloves too much, any of those type of things or concerns, or how do you differentiate around, how kids interact from a personality standpoint?
Yeah, it goes back to, the whole situation about trusting club coaches and high school coaches and people in the locale to which you're recruiting. Typically those guys get weeded out before they would even have any chance of getting to campus. Sometimes they get through the cracks. Sometimes they even get through the cracks when they get to your campus, but they are very quickly found out. And if you have a strong enough culture with an incredible work ethic, with great people, that's player driven, where I always say like one of the greatest things that I can witness as a coach is being able to teach a kid a skill and then watch him turn around and give it to somebody else. And that's the culture that we've built here at High Point, both on and off the field. And I'll tell you right now, any guy that would come in here that pulls the cart the wrong way gets found out very quickly. And they don't.
Any like examples around that?
Yeah, well, that's a question that we could sit here and talk about till about 10 o'clock at night. But body language, I mean, the way you talk to your parents, the demeanor in the office. I mean, there's been times where, like I said, I don't really mess around with people that I don't want to waste time with. I've got too much stuff going on in my life to waste time on people that aren't going to help our program or me as a person or my family, be put in a positive light. So it's very quick when we run across a person like that, we're like, listen, this isn't going to work out here. And, I say all the time, I'd rather have a hard 30-second conversation and be awkward for 30 seconds and have, 4 years of dealing with someone that is not in line with the way our program is run. But I mean, you name it. I mean, I've had kids in the office who, eye roll when their parents talk, that are instant no's. I have kids that, will go after their coaches at an event, instant no. Parents that act like complete jackasses on the sideline, instant no. We have parents in our program, and every once in a while, we have to have a conversation with our parents, and we've put together, a 20+ page parent manual for our parents to understand, how to act as a Division I parent, the do's, the don'ts, things that you're going to experience this year, things that your son's going to experience this year, what different parts of the year are going to look like. And so we weed a lot of that stuff out in the forefront. But, I'll tell you a great story. Last year, we had a parent that was, hot tipping. I mean, they were saying move the ball in our offense. And our offense at times is not a move the ball offense. Our offense at times is put the ball in the hands of your best player and allow him to operate and see the field, And so we had to move the ball at a time where, we didn't want to move the ball. We wanted to be hard cut inside. We wanted to let the defense get sucked down from X, and we wanted to be able to create some opportunities off of that. And so, I heard that parent on the film, okay, that I was watching with our staff on Monday. Actually, was watching Sunday night up at my house. And I just sent a letter to the parents. I say, listen, whoever moved the ball, dad is, stop. And if you don't stop, the next time we play, I'm going to put the camera in the front row. I'm going to turn it around and film the stands. When I find out who this is, I'm going to post it and play it for the guys in the locker room. And I had 2 dads reach out to me that night and say, hey, I'm sorry about that. It's just, again, it's a standard to which we hold our players to. It's a standard to which we hold our parents to. And it's not to be, some sort of dictator, but listen, if I'm dealing with parent issues or I'm dealing with player issues off the field, knock on wood, that we don't really have to deal with a whole lot, then it's taking me away from running my program, and our staff running our program the way we deem fit. So we try to eliminate anything that's not pulling us in the right direction, from recruiting to issues off the field to, parent, buy-in to, a player talking back in practice. If you're going to talk back to me in practice at a time where we have a plan in place that's going to work, you're taking away from our ability to focus on the rest of the guys that are out there. If you want to do that in my office, I got all day for that, So, it's just eliminating all those things that might seem minute to some people, but can be magnified as major deficiencies if they're not addressed.
What'd you call it? Hot tipping?
Yeah. That's shoot to score, dad, catch it, move it, that kind of thing.
Lyle Thompson as a senior at Albany, there wasn't a lot of calls to move the ball. It was like,
nah.
Just at the high school level, physically, athletically. I mean, obviously you're recruiting your guys, but just the importance of, I'd say, maybe fitness or weight training.
Physical attributes. We don't fall in love with the typical guy. Like I said, there's big guys on our team, but a lot of our guys are undersized, and there's reasons for that. And we could talk all night about that, but the biggest thing, and I tell guys all the time, the most important note I can take on a guy is just motor. If they have a motor that never stops, and they're a guy that, looks the same at the beginning of the possession as they do at the end of the possession, looks the beginning of the game as they do at the end of the tournament, there's a good likelihood that kid is probably going to pop for us and get circled and, get contacted. So you can, I tell my son all the time, I don't think he's the most skilled player, but he never stops moving, and he's just got an insane motor and an insane competitive drive. And so I know that the skill part's going to catch up at some point when he falls in love with the game, at the rate I did as a child. But as long as he's competing at a high level and giving it his all and never stopping and taking plays off, then there's a good chance that you'll find a home somewhere.
Great. And about just perspectives for players, families that have some kind of advocate, whether it's club, high school, the value of advocate, or for yourself, like you said, people that you trust, that you can rely on in some cases. The thing is, the best advice I can give is put your son in an environment where he's going to grow. That's the biggest thing as a person, as a player, being around the right guys. Sometimes it's a benefit to play on a program where there's a really good kid. If there's a really good kid on a team that's going to be seen by a lot of coaches, you might go, I watched the kid play this summer, man, and I fell in love with a certain kid, but there was another kid on that team that, because I was watching that other kid play 3 or 4 times, I said, holy cow, this other guy's, just as good, if not better. And, I ended up taking, multiple guys from that team. It was great. So I think in general, everywhere, sometimes you just have to just take a step back. And I know for myself as a Division I athlete and a guy that got a chance to play a little bit after college and, being around college athletics, my number one concern is are my kids healthy? Is my family healthy? Great. Are they in an environment where they're growing and being challenged and being held accountable? Awesome. Are they playing a high level? All those things are just add-ons, but value the people that you're playing with. My God, if you're playing for an organization and you don't like the people that they're around, or you feel like your child is changing for, the not so right reasons,
that's probably not a great place to play, So, that's just more fatherly advice than coaching advice. But, I think both those things go hand in hand.
Some people are asking about goalies, being uniqueness. And I know as a coach, it can be tricky too. I think basically the questions around the goalie position was, I think it was along the lines of anything you suggest regarding goalies and the recruitment, any unique considerations, just any insight, as you have for all the goalies out there.
Yeah. I mean, the blanket statement answer is just, be really good at what you do, man, and be unique. I mean, for us, if you're talking about the goalies, the simple things are save the ball, clear the ball, run the defense, have a voice. And, for us, beyond that, a lot of angles, a lot of positioning, things like that, hand placement, the technical stuff we kind of fix here and erase a lot of what guys have learned, kind of coming in. We always want a goalie too that has a presence outside the cage. I think if you look at what Timmy Troutner does in the cage, it's fantastic. It's as good as anybody out there. But if you look at what guys in our program have done outside the cage, Timmy, Austin Geisler, Anthony Porchetta, Matt Sigmund, Zach Till, I can go on and on and on, and list the goalies that have played for us, what they do outside the cage in the pick game, what they do outside the cage in terms of showing, what they do in terms of playing a high crease. I mean, look at the school that you're interested in and see what that goalie plays. If he's playing a flat arc with a super wide stance, and that's the way that the three goalies previous to him have played, and you're a, high arc, more of an active guy, that might not be what they're looking for. So
when you say outside just to clarify, outside of the crease, you're talking about the style you play position wise, or literally when you're clearing the ball and you're physically outside the crease?
Just everything. I mean,
okay.
We jump picks, we jump slips with our goalie at X. We show to dodges at X with our goalie. We can double with our goalie. I'll never forget with, Jamie and I coaching our team out in Denver at Notre Dame a couple of years ago. We didn't feel like we could leave the kid Hoff inside. And we decided to, V-hold their best attackman behind the goal line. And we started sending our goalie out on doubles. And there was nobody to throw the ball to. It was an all-in Dodger. So we ask a lot out of those guys. And the clearing.
Oh, interesting.
In terms of just, being a presence on ground balls in front of the crease. I mean, we want our goalie to truly be the seventh defenseman, and we don't want to confine the seventh defenseman to an area that's just inside of the crease.
How about Fogos, face-off guys? I saw a question in the comments.
Such a unique position. I mean, I think a lot of schools are starting to go with like two guys a year at the face-off X, which I think is smart because there's, you hear Andy Towers talk about it, rock, paper, scissors. I mean, there's guys that can beat certain guys and there's guys that can beat other guys. And, for us, I think one of the biggest things with face-off guys is just we want to see them play against someone that we would consider elite. We want to see them play against someone that is considered one of the best guys in the class. And, it's part of the reason why right now we don't have a 21 face-off guy, because I'm waiting on film to come in from some of the guys we like that, film that they've competed against some of the better guys in that class or some of the better guys, in that locale. And a lot of the times, like for us, face-off evaluations could come in the form of a dad with an iPhone, filming, hey, this is my son going up against, the best kid in Charlotte or the best kid in Greensboro or the best kid in Atlanta, and you know who that kid is and you're watching them and they're zooming in and you're slow-mowing, some of the stuff they do technique-wise, what kind of head they're using, where the ball's placed, I mean, what they're doing post-face-off. We want all the homework and everything we can on all of our guys, but face-off guys and goalies are very unique, and for us, we've been very fortunate. We've been able to shoot on at prospect clinics really the last, I'd say almost all the goalies that have ever played in our program, we've been able to shoot on at some point and been able to just fire on them. Just see, how quickly we can change some of the things they do technique-wise and, how we can take them from point A to point B and see if they're coachable enough to be able to do those things in a short amount of time. But face-off guys, I mean, wow, what an incredibly unique position. I would say the one thing with face-off guys is just maybe the most underrated skill is escapability. I know there's a lot of guys that can win technique or that can, pull a club out of their bag and do something completely different. But if you can't get away, you can't throw a good pass, you can't escape traffic at this level or, win kind of more of a 50-50 jammed up ball. With people that can manipulate the face-off position with certain things they do, in traffic, you ain't playing anywhere. You're not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's real. That makes a lot of sense. I know it's funny sometimes because you're watching, if I see a highlight film of a goalie or a faceoff guy, I think what I heard you say is, hey, it definitely matters. It probably matters for all players, but especially those positions, it matters like who they're going against. Because, by definition, every Fogo highlight film is the guy who wins every faceoff, and they save every shot, right?
Save every shot, win every faceoff, and that's when you start to go to camps and you're like, my son plays, 6th grade soccer right now. And every time a goal gets scored on him, he gets upset. And I'm like, I want to see that. I want to see that. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. Sometimes it's something you just have to address early on that can get fixed. Maybe it's the kid's super competitive, but, we don't want a goalie that, literally gives three a row and he looks like Charlie Brown. He's like hanging his head, walking around the crease, and he's looking for, somebody to console him. Because at that point, you let 3 in on a row and they're not, they're shots that you should be saving. There's a good likelihood you're going to get courtside seats for the rest of the game, standing behind one of your coaches. So, it's one of those things where, like, can you bounce back? And that was what made Timmy so incredible is nothing ever rattled that kid. Nothing, no game, no situation, no, get 5 pumped on you early. It's going to happen at some point. Defensive breakdown, toss away a clear, guy gets a ride back. Like, it's going to happen, man. It's inevitable with the teams we play. They're all fantastic. So, what's that guy like? Is he going to be able to shake those things, or is he going to be, completely dictated his attitude based on the fact that he's not having that great of a game?
That's terrific. All right, last couple here. So just how about a couple points on the attack, just off the top of your head of, what you're, I'll say, looking for, might jump out to you.
It depends. If you're looking at an inside guy, it's obviously finishing ability to ride. If you're looking at a flow guy, a guy that can just kind of run the offense and maybe not be that primary dodger, but a pretty good feeder and has the capability to dodge or play in the 2-man game. There's things we're looking at there, but there's got to be a riding element. And I think if you're looking for that, unicorn, that X guy who can, break people down and force people to put their attention behind the goal. There's those guys. They have multiple facets to their game that allow them to be who they are. It's not just speed. It's, the bounciness of their dodges, the deception, to which they play with the head of their stick, the way their eyes are, the ability to turn the corner. But I think any offensive position, you got to first and foremost be able to beat your guy. And then when you beat your guy, it's about making the right decisions. And, you don't want to overcomplicate this game. And I think it's something that we've taken a lot of pride in. It's offensively, get to the middle of the field. Defensively, protect the middle of the field. Teach your guys how to be great dodgers first. Teach your guys how to be great defenders first. And then kind of build your offense around the personality that you have. Multiple ways to dodge. But I'm telling you, if you're a midfielder and you want to separate yourself, get back in home play defense. If you were an attackman and you want to separate yourself, ride the midfield line on every possession like your life depends on it.
That's great. Yeah. Along those lines, on the midfield, any perspective around, even like with the shot clock or any of that perspective, or short stick defensive midfielders, is there any change around, how you think about recruiting it, or do you still recruit, or do you recruit short stick defensive midfielders, or versus offensive, or is it more all purpose?
We typically recruit offensive midfielders and then surprise them when they get there and make them defensive midfielders. That's how we do that. Or maybe sometimes we surprise them with a pull. So, yeah, and you got to have the right mindset. And I think the funny thing with our defensive midfielders is now they're offensive minded, and it's like the Gary Patterson philosophy at Texas Christian about bringing in guys that have all had their hands on the ball, guys that are skilled guys. We want our defensemen like that. 2 of our 3 starting defensemen were, very good offensive players. With our short stick defensive middies, they were all first midfield line players at fantastic high schools and great club programs. And so, when we save the ball, it gives us the ability to have a personality in the clear. And when we get the ball to the offensive end of the field, it gives us a personality in the early offense and the sub game to keep those guys on and be multiple. We've talked about it for years. We think our defensive midfielders' ability to be able to push transition really becomes an X factor of our program. And it's not just transition. It's, attacking from behind in the early offense. It's pick play. It's, dodging from specific spots. And our defensive midfielders will take as many dodges, during the course of a practice year as our offensive guys will. So.
Yeah, on the offensive side of the college level, is it, the attack midfielders, is it more of change? I know there's been talk kind of like the Golden State, the basketball influence of positions changing, but still from your perspective, attack versus midfield on the offensive side, is there anything kind of evolving on that side that you're seeing at the Division I level?
Yeah, I think you're seeing a lot more schools, recruit attack-like players to play in their offense, guys that can dodge with their sticks to the inside, guys that can, do multiple moves to beat their guy, guys that can get underneath. I think, where it was in years past, you're always kind of basing, what you want your team to look like off of the team that won the national championship. And I laugh with that, because for me, it's like, are you going to play like Virginia without Doc Sakin, without Ryan Conrad, without Krause, without Laviano? Like, good luck. You're not going to win a lot of games, So you have to find that style that's unique to you, recruit to that, develop that, and, be consistent in terms of what you want to do. So for us, it's not that many traditional downhill guys. Like I said, there's a couple of those guys in our program that have elite speed or elite power, but the majority of our guys in our program dodge like attackmen all over the field in really all 6 spots to which we would dodge from.
Do you have guys playing attack in high school that you're mixing them around based on what you think is the best fit, or vice versa potentially?
Yeah, we do that with every position. I mean, some of the best guys I've ever had are, attacking that we put a pole in their hands. I mean, when they get there, I don't rely on high school coaches, to tell me exactly where that kid should be playing. I rely on our staff. And there's guys that come in. We had 2 players this year that were, all-American caliber players coming out of high school that were, purely offensive guys, one in attack and one in midi, and both of those guys have now moved to the defensive midfield because we want guys that can attack in that position. And sometimes the offensive players have a great perspective in terms of how to shut somebody down because they're so used to, doing multiple things to beat someone. I'd say for us, we kind of, recruit probably more attacking than we do midfield, just in terms of the way we dodge and the way we run our offense. And I always ask guys, I think some kids, the kid that gets upset when you make them a different position, that guy never makes it here. I'll give you a scenario. I say to guys all the time, he might have been an attackman, a dodging attackman coming out of high school. If we dodge the wings, we dodge the low corners, we dodge X, we play 2-man game at X, and we dodge in front of the goal, what we would call the 2 spot, right in front of the goal. Mm-hmm. And we say, listen, the 2 spot is essentially X with one opportunity more than you have at X, which is to score. We're going to give you a lot of real estate up there to dodge into and create space for you. So we're dodging in the same spots an attackman would dodge into. So for us, I always say, would you rather dodge a pole or a short stick? So if you're a younger guy and you're coming out of the box, you're going to be able to do the same things you did as an attackman in high school. You're just going to do it against a short stick, And so, you might have better opportunities to get your hands free, score, or make plays.
So along those lines, I had a scenario with a talented defender who really effective, efficient midfielder scoring-wise, even though he actually prefers to play defense. From a college perspective, if they're a good athlete, playing both and they have an opportunity to excel at both, it's not necessarily going to hurt them. The player worries, well, hey, I want to play defense in college and I'm out here playing some midfield. Not necessarily going to hurt the chances at the next level. Right?
I don't think so. I mean, listen, I'll talk about one of the most decorated players that's played in our program that people in Atlanta know. I think he's one of the best players ever come out of the city of Atlanta. And it's kid Zach Price. And Zach Price came here from Lambert as an offensive midfielder. I loved his athleticism. And about a quarter of the way through his freshman season, we're playing Carolina in 4 days. And I said, hey, come into my office, man. I want to talk to you. And I said, what do you think about playing pole? And his eyes lit up. He's like, awesome. Because he was running on the second midfield line, bouncing between offensive midi and defensive midi. And we needed an athletic presence as a pole. And so I pulled the pole out from under my desk and I go, here you go, man. You're going to get the first wing against North Carolina. And he never played with us before. I was like, dude, by the time we hit Saturday, we'll have you dialed into that thing to the point where you feel super comfortable. And the rest is history. I mean, he went on to play in the MLL. He, became an all-conference type player for us. Fantastic leader. And, I always said he was one of the best on, off, and with ball guys that I've ever had the opportunity to coach. And he did that in 3 years. I mean, so if you've got an attitude that's like, oh, this sucks, I can't believe my coach did this, you'll never get good at it. But if you have an attitude like Zach did, which was, give me whatever, man, I just want the opportunity to play, and you've got this positive attitude and you're bought into the development piece of how I get better. I mean, the amount of time that I went out and worked with Zach Price one-on-one, just out on the field, just to get him up to speed on where other guys were, it was mind-blowing. A lot of people wouldn't want to put that time in, but, I saw a lot of promise in him, and, thank God we did it because he, was just fantastic. That's
cool. I'm gonna hit you the final 3. They were kind of wrap-up questions. One is about prospect days. High Point is that people want to learn about that. Is there, I don't know if you know the dates off the top of your head or where people can, when does that usually happen during the year for you guys?
Yeah, we've got one October 26th, 27th, December 7th, and 6th through the 8th, I think. And then we've got one that we do in January. It's you can go to our website, the High Point Lacrosse website, and there's information on there.
Some just final wrap-up thoughts for people or advice for people here. on the recruiting process, because I think this has been, like I said, I was super pumped for this and exceeded my expectations. So I see we've got big numbers on here, and a lot of people are going to watch the recording.
Final thoughts on the recruiting process: enjoy every minute. I mean, don't get stressed by this thing. Like I said, each person's got a unique kind of story that they're going to be able to tell at the end of the process, when it's over. And, if you do your work and you're a good person and you don't have any social issues, you don't have any academic issues, you don't have any effort-based failures, you're going to have an opportunity to play somewhere, and don't scoff at opportunities outside of Division I, because that's where most guys will end up playing.
Someone asked, does a kid communicate his grades to you, or how do you guys, just logistically, how does that work? So you guys figure out if the kid's, really struggling or a good student?
It's a good question. Good piece of advice I can give you is when you email us, which is a great first kind of introduction to us, CC the entire staff, because there's days where, I'm too busy and I'm not able to look at my emails, but our staff can, and put, information in there that's going to catch a coach's eye. Obviously, if you've got good grades, put that in there. If your grades aren't that great, put that in there. Be honest with us. Mm-hmm. If you've got accolades outside of the sport of lacrosse or things you've done in the community, that stuff's great. If you've got a highlight film, if you're a senior, don't send your freshman highlight film. Do something to update that and give us the best, most recent version of yourself. And, put somebody in there that might catch our eye in terms of, people that we might know in that locale. If you've got somebody that can speak on your behalf, it's somebody that we know and there's a connection there, there's a good chance we're probably going to reach out to find out who you are.
That's great. And when you say email, so like right now, what would be the age group that age-wise could email you? What class you're versus those that it's like, hey, it's too soon. Don't shoot us an email tomorrow.
Any class can email us. I mean, we typically put those guys in a database, and then anybody that fills a questionnaire out online, that goes into the same database. So you can send us, information. Like I said, just don't expect a return email if you're not a 2021 or 2020.
Okay, that's again super good insight here for everyone. Projecting next year, how do you feel about next season? And sounds like you're working on maybe a backup goalie, but just as a team, and coming off let's call it historic, really what you guys did this past year. Thoughts for 2020 here?
Yeah, I think we're a work in progress, but I love the staff. I love the guys. I think the dynamic of the way the guys are leading right now is super high end. And I mean, like I said before, it is like such an unbelievably fun group of guys to coach. I mean, there's a lot of hard work that's gone into where we are today, and there'll continue to be hard work down the line. But it's pretty cool to see kind of the fruits of our labor with some of the successes that we have, and some of the opportunities our guys have gotten while they're here or post graduation. And it's just, I mean, it's coaching in a place like High Point, working with a university president like we have, having the opportunity to work for an athletic director with the staff that I have, with the guys I have. I mean, it is a dream come true, and it is like everything and anything I could have ever imagined, this profession being when I was a junior in high school, and I decided this is what I wanted to do. So it's going to be a fun year. We've got a great challenge with our schedule. We open up with Carolina as our first scrimmage, and we go Carolina to Maryland to Duke to Drexel to Cornell to UVA to Robert Morris to UMBC, St. Bonaventure, then into conference. So I honestly feel like we're playing the number one strength of schedule outside of conference like we did in 2018, and it'll be a good measuring stick as to how good our team can be this year.
I know. I mean, yourself, you said you were talking about helping your players and families. It's not just playing. I know you care about any internships, what they're going to do after college. You're thinking about trying to help these, right? Just this is a bigger than just playing a sport for these guys, right?
I think, for us, man, it's like I tell guys all the time, when we make a commitment to a guy, it's firm. And it's you got my staff, myself in your corner for the rest of your life. And I got guys that, played for me 15, 16 years ago that'll still call and ask for advice or help or, invitation to wedding. And, if I can't make it to your wedding, I usually send a pretty cool gift. But, I love my guys. I love every guy that I've had the opportunity to coach, whether they've stayed for 4 years or they've left. I mean, I wouldn't have them be a part of what we're doing if I didn't care about them. And I know a lot of people say that, and it's lip service, and it might not be, completely true. But I think, the one thing that is neat about our program is you've got an entire group of people. Our entire organization moves in the same direction every day, from our parents to our trainers to our academic support staff to my staff to the guy who plays the most and the guy who plays the least. And when you have that and it's rolling in the same direction and there's buy-in like our guys have, I mean, anything's possible. And you've seen a program that's not even 9 years old do some things that, programs that have been around for 100 years haven't been able to accomplish. So we're hopefully, on a good trajectory, and we'll be able to continue to do those things down the line.
Excellent. Yeah. And the comments coming in have been excellent. Great job. Super appreciative. Great webinar. I know Jason Joe, his son's is going through the football. He's like, football recruiters. I wish I'd seen this last year for football because this would have been helpful. This is great stuff. Awesome stuff.
Anybody that's putting a negative comment in there, your name is attached to it. We'll just make sure your son doesn't play Division 1, 2, or 3.
Yeah. Hey, you said you were going to be as honest and direct as any discussion we ever had. I think you've lived up to it. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, we're an open book. I mean, if anybody ever is in the area and wants to stop by practice or come by, the locker room after a game, I'd say before, if we lose, you probably don't want to come in there. But before, I mean, listen, we love, being a program that's associated with, areas of the country that are up and coming. And there's no doubt that you guys are doing a fantastic job. And, the city of Atlanta, I mean, the more the merrier, the more we can get up here, the better off we'll probably be as a program going down the line.
Thank you, Ed. Have a great night, Coach.
You too. Take care. Thanks for having me. See you guys.